In the winter of 1899, the Ozark Mountains stood silent, too silent. Fog wrapped itself around the trees like a living thing, creeping between trunks and swallowing sound. The locals said the mountains listened. They remembered. And when they were hungry, they took. 28 men had vanished over the past 2 years. Woodcutters, hunters, travelers, fortune seekers. Every one of them had entered the mountains with confidence. None had returned. No bodies were found. No blood trails. Just abandoned camps, broken tools, and silence. Whispers of the sisters. In the nearby town of Hollow Creek, people avoided speaking at night. When they did whisper, one name passed from mouth to mouth like a curse. The Ozark sisters. 3 women who lived deep in the forest. Beautiful, reclusive, unnaturally calm. Some said they healed the sick. Others claimed they cursed those who angered them. And the oldest rumor, the one people feared most, spoke of a cellar beneath their house, a place where men went and were never seen again. Elias Harper. Elias Harper was not afraid of rumors. At 27, he worked as a freelance journalist from St. Louis, chasing strange stories for small newspapers. Ghost towns, missing persons, unsolved crimes, fear sold papers, and Elias knew it. When he read about the disappearances in Hollow Creek, he packed his bags within a day. Mountains don't eat people, he said while boarding the train. People do. A warning ignored. The train dropped Elias at a small wooden station just before dusk. The town looked tired, buildings leaning, paint peeling, eyes watching from behind curtains. At the general store, an old man with shaking hands stared at him. "You're not from here," the man said. "I'm looking into the missing men," Elias replied. The old man's face drained of color. "Then leave," he whispered. "Before dark." "Why?" Elias asked. The man leaned closer. "Because the sisters don't like strangers." Into the forest. Elias entered the forest the next morning. Almost immediately, the air changed. The forest felt wrong, too still. No birds. No insects. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. His compass spun wildly. Hours later, as daylight faded, he saw a structure between the trees. A cabin. Old. Wooden. Crooked. Smoke curled gently from its chimney. Relief washed over him. The 3 women. The door opened before Elias could knock. 3 women stood inside. They were pale, their hair long and dark, their eyes unsettlingly bright. They smiled at him, but their smiles never reached their eyes. "You look lost," said the eldest. "I am," Elias admitted. "May I rest here for the night?" The sisters exchanged glances. "Of course," said the middle one softly. The door closed behind him with a sound that echoed like a lock. A house that watched. Inside, the cabin was warm and clean. A fire burned. A meal waited on the table. Yet Elias felt watched. The walls creaked, slowly, deliberately. The floor vibrated underfoot. As night deepened, the sisters spoke little. They watched him eat. Watched him drink. "Do travelers often pass this way?" Elias asked. "No," said the youngest sister. "Only the unlucky ones." The sound below. Elias awoke near midnight. A sound pulled him from sleep. Crying. Not loud, muffled, desperate. It came from beneath the floor. He held his breath. The sisters were gone. Near the fireplace, a wooden door lay partially open. Stairs led down. And from below came the sound of chains. The cellar. Each step creaked as Elias descended. The air grew colder. Damp. Metallic. At the bottom, his lantern revealed the truth. Men. Dozens of them. Some alive. Some skeletal. All chained. Their eyes turned toward him, wide with terror. On the stone wall, written in dried blood, were the words, "We came seeking work. We found hell." Behind him, the stairs creaked. The sisters were coming down. The sisters stopped at the final step. Lantern light flickered across their faces, carving shadows that made them look less human, more like something old wearing human skin. "You should not be here," the eldest sister said calmly. Elias stepped back, his heart hammering. The chained men stirred, weak hands rattling iron, hope and terror mixed in their eyes. "What is this place?" Elias demanded. "What have you done to them?" The middle sister tilted her head, studying him as one might study livestock. "We have done nothing," she replied. "This is simply where they belong." The men who never left. Elias moved closer to the prisoners. One man clutched his sleeve. His fingers were thin as sticks, his skin grey. "Don't believe them," the man whispered. "They feed on us, not our flesh, our years." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Before the man could answer, the youngest sister slammed a metal rod against the wall. Silence fell instantly. "They talk too much," she said. "That shortens their usefulness." A horrifying truth. The eldest sister stepped forward. "Men come to these mountains greedy," she said. "They want gold, land, power. We take something far more valuable." She gestured toward the prisoners. "Time." Elias's stomach twisted. "You're killing them," he said. "No," she corrected. "We are keeping them alive." The ritual. At the center of the cellar stood a stone table, blackened with age. Symbols were carved deep into its surface, symbols Elias recognized from old folklore books. Runes of preservation. Runes of binding. The middle sister traced one with her finger. "As long as they breathe," she said, "we do not age." Elias stared at them now, really stared. Their skin was smooth. Their eyes ancient. "How long have you been alive?" he asked. The eldest smiled. "Longer than this country." The first sister. "They started coming in 1821, the eldest continued. "Hunters at first. Then miners. Then fools chasing stories." Her voice hardened. "Men have always taken from us. So now, we take back." One prisoner screamed suddenly as the youngest sister placed her hand on his chest. His body shriveled. Hair turned white. His scream became a breath, then nothing. The sister inhaled deeply. Her eyes gleamed brighter. Elias's choice. Elias backed toward the stairs. "You can't keep doing this," he said. The sisters laughed, softly. "You will stay," said the middle sister. "You are strong, curious. You will last a long time." Chains dragged across the stone floor. A collar snapped shut around Elias's neck. The marked wall. As they dragged him toward an empty chain, Elias saw names carved into the walls. 28 names. Dates beside them. The last date was yesterday. His name was already there. Hope in the dark. In the far corner, an old man caught Elias's eye. He raised 2 fingers, then pointed upward. The ceiling. A crack ran through the stone, small but real. Elias swallowed hard. If there was any chance at all, he would have to take it. Because once the sisters fed again, there would be nothing left of him but bones and time. The birth of the sisters. Time moved differently in the cellar. Elias could not tell whether hours or days had passed. The lantern light never changed, and the sisters came and went without pattern. Each time they descended, one man grew weaker, and one sister grew stronger. Elias learned quickly to stay silent. The chains around his wrists were cold, but not tight enough to stop movement. Whoever had built the cellar had wanted suffering, not quick death. The old man's story. One night, if it could still be called night, the old man beside Elias finally spoke. "My name was Thomas Bell," he whispered. "I came here in 1853. Elias stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible." Thomas smiled weakly. "That's what they took from me. Possibility." He glanced toward the stairs. They were not always like this. Before the mountains turned. Thomas explained that the sisters had once been ordinary women, daughters of a mountain healer. Their mother knew herbs, charms, and old rituals passed down from women who lived in the land long before settlers arrived. When their mother died, men from Hollow Creek came to claim her land. They accused the girls of witchcraft, Thomas said, dragged them from their home. The sisters were beaten, branded, left to die in the woods. But the mountains listened. The pact. Barely alive, the sisters crawled back to their ruined home. Beneath it, their mother had hidden something ancient, an altar older than language. They made a pact, Thomas whispered. Not with the devil, but with the mountain itself. The land demanded payment. Blood, breath, time, and in return, it granted them life without end. The first feeding. The first man disappeared a week later. Then another. The cellar was dug deeper. The chains multiplied. Each life stolen strengthened the sisters' bond to the land. They are no longer just women, Thomas said. They are guardians of hunger. The crack in the stone. Elias remembered the old man's signal. The ceiling. At the far end of the cellar, where the stone met earth, a thin crack leaked cold air. Roots pushed through like skeletal fingers. Every night, Elias tested his chains, slowly, carefully. One link was weaker than the rest. Hope returned, sharp and dangerous. The sister who hesitated. Not all sisters were the same. The youngest lingered near the prisoners longer than necessary. Her hands sometimes trembled. Once, she met Elias's eyes, and looked away. "You don't belong here," Elias whispered when she passed. Her jaw tightened. "Neither did we," she replied. The plan. Elias waited. The sisters always fed at the same time, when the cellar grew unnaturally warm, when the symbols on the altar glowed faintly red. That would be the moment. If he could break the chain, if he could reach the crack, the mountains had created the sisters. But maybe they could also destroy them. A final warning. As the sisters began their ritual, Thomas grabbed Elias's arm. "If you run," he said, "don't look back." Why? Because the land hates being betrayed. The symbols ignited. The sisters sang in a language that hurt to hear. And Elias pulled, hard, against the weakest link. Metal screamed. The chain began to give. The escape the mountain never forgave. The chain snapped with a sharp, violent crack. The sound cut through the sisters chanting like a knife. For a single heartbeat, everything froze. Then the eldest sister screamed. Chaos in the cellar. The symbols carved into the stone flared bright red, flooding the cellar with hellish light. The chained men cried out as the ground trembled beneath them. "Stop him!" The eldest sister roared. Elias ran. His boots slipped on damp stone as he sprinted toward the cracked ceiling. Behind him, chains rattled wildly as prisoners thrashed, some shouting for him to come back, others praying he would not. The youngest sister lunged first. Her fingers brushed Elias's coat, and the fabric withered, turning brittle and grey in her hand. The mountain wakes. Elias slammed his shoulder into the cracked stone. Once. Twice. On the third strike, the ceiling gave way. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and soil. Elias clawed upward, tearing his hands on roots and rock. Below him, the sisters' voices changed, no longer calm, no longer human. They howled. The walls began to bleed. The youngest sister's choice. As Elias pulled himself into the narrow tunnel, he felt a hand grip his ankle. The youngest sister. Her face was twisted with pain, not rage. "Go," she whispered. The eldest sister shrieked in fury. "You would betray us." "I never chose this," the youngest screamed back. With a final shove, she released Elias. The tunnel collapsed behind him. A forest that hunts. Elias burst into the open forest, gasping. But the mountains were not done. Trees bent unnaturally, roots rising like snakes from the ground. The fog thickened, swallowing direction and sound. Elias ran blindly. Every step felt watched. Branches tore at his skin. Whispers followed him, voices of the men still trapped below. The price of freedom. By dawn, Elias collapsed near the edge of Hollow Creek. His hair had turned white. Deep lines carved his face, as though years had been ripped through him in hours. The townspeople found him barely alive. When they asked what happened in the mountains, Elias screamed. What the town found. A search party returned to the cabin 3 days later. The house was gone. In its place was a sinkhole, deep and silent. No cellar. No chains. No bodies. Only a single symbol carved into the stone. A circle broken in 3. The sister who remained. That night, deep in the forest, something moved beneath the earth. One sister survived. And she was hungry. Elias Harper never fully left the Ozarks. Though his body survived, something essential remained behind, woven into stone, root, and blood. The man who aged overnight. Doctors in St. Louis called it shock. Clerks called it madness. But Elias knew the truth. He had escaped with his life. Not his time. Within weeks, his hands trembled. His vision dimmed. Memories slipped away like water through cracked glass. At night, he dreamed of the cellar, of chains tightening, of a woman's voice whispering his name from beneath the earth. The story no one printed. Elias wrote everything down. The sisters, the cellar, the men. He sent the story to every newspaper he knew. Every single one rejected it. Some returned his pages unopened. Others replied with a single sentence. This account cannot be verified. One editor added a note in the margin. Men go missing in mountains. They always have. The last sister. Deep beneath the Ozarks, the youngest sister crawled through collapsed tunnels. She was changed. Her immortality was cracked, leaking away like blood from an open wound. Where once she had been ageless, now lines crept slowly across her skin. She could feel the mountain withdrawing its favor. But hunger remained. And hunger demanded balance. A debt unpaid. The pact had been broken. The mountain had lost its prisoners. And the mountain always reclaimed what it was owed. Storms came harder that year. Sinkholes opened without warning. Entire hunting parties vanished without trace. The elders of Hollow Creek stopped going into the forest altogether. They knew better. Elias's return. 10 years later, Elias Harper returned to the Ozarks. He walked with a cane. His back was bent. His breath shallow. But his eyes were clear. He carried a journal, his final attempt to warn anyone who might listen. At the edge of the forest, he stopped. The fog rolled in, thick and familiar. I gave you enough, Elias whispered. I survived. The mountains did not answer. The final descent.